Change your heart, Lord, change our heart. You're living in a lawful way. Be mindful of what you say. Be sincere when you pray. Today could be your last day. Bear each other, no malice. Greed and faith can coexist in the same heart.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, dear viewers, joining us live on our program Gems of the Heart, and I'm your host for the program, Junaid Dar. Dear viewers, we've been off air for a number of weeks, but now we are back, inshallah ta'ala, and we have an action-packed program for you today. Our series, right from the beginning, has been focusing on the issues pertaining to the heart, those issues in particular relating to matters of belief, aqidah as it is known in Arabic. And we've been following a series looking at Tawheed and its different elements. We looked at the Rububiyyah, the very fact that Allah is our Lord and He is the only one that we worship. Then we moved forward and we looked at the issues of Tawheed al-Ibadah, the worship of Allah, how we can single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our worship in everything that we do. But this topic was huge, so we had a discussion on that, and inside of that was the exact counter opposite, and that was shirk. What constitutes shirk and what actions do we do that qualify as being shirk? And inside of that we have a very special discussion today, and I think it's a very pertinent discussion. The topic is very important because we see this action all around the world, and there are a lot of misconceptions or misunderstandings on that as well. As you've seen in the title, we today are going to be talking about tawassul. Now, many of you probably asking, what is tawassul? We will go into that in some detail, and hopefully during the end of the program as well, we'll be having a look at issues relating to the graves and how Muslims should deal with graves, what are the etiquettes, what are the manners, and how we should behave in such places. So we've got a very fun program. We're going to be talking about lots of different things, and the lines are open as well. We want you to interact with us. We want you to speak to us, give us your questions, give us your queries. Our phone lines will be there across the screens, so do join us. You can also join us on Facebook as well. You will see a post there, and inshallah ta'ala, we can take your comments during the program as well. Let us begin by introducing our guest, and then we can go straight into our topic for the day. If I can turn to my guest we have with us, Sheikh Ibrahim Zidan. MashaAllah, Sheikh, it's fantastic to have you back and on the program as well. I'd like to give you a warm welcome and say Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Always a pleasure.
Sheikh, it's been a long time since we haven't had this program, Gems of the Heart. How good does it feel to be back on air and to talk about these issues?
Wallahi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. It's always good to be able to have the opportunity to benefit our own selves, and we can, expand that to others. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept, inshallah.
Barakallah fiqh. Yeah. Sheikh, if we can have a quick recap of the things we've discussed previously. We're on a series talking about Tawheed, and we're inside the Tawheed of Ibadah. Very quickly, what is Tawheed al-Ibadah?
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah wa ba'd. The word Tawheed, as we heard before, is the oneness, and al-Ibadah is to worship. So to worship none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in worship. And that is something comprehensive because it covers the entire life and covers every act of worship that we do has to be exclusively, sincerely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth. And nothing cannot be established good unless it's done, and then we are warned against what negates it and what breaks it. And that's why when we talk about Tawheed of al-Ibadah, we have to talk about the shirk, what negates this. So basically, La ilaha illallah, there's no one worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we have to be truthful when we say this word in every salah we make, in every dua we make, in every action. We have to refer it back and we have to apply La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Okay, and Sheikh, you make it sound so easy. It's just the shahada, but yet there are so many books written on the subject and there's so much confusion amongst people. Where does this confusion come from, and why is there a lack of understanding on worshipping Allah alone?
The confusion comes from the very first moment when Shaitan refused to make sujood to Adam alayhi salam, and he took upon himself that he would deviate people from the true path. The work of Shaitan is not just for people to commit sins, it's only steps. The real goal of Shaitan is for people to fall into shirk.
Okay.
It's for people to be in the hellfire forever. So all of the plots of Shaitan and all of the sins and so on, it's all steps for the bigger goal. And that's why this matter of shirk, where you find human beings are indulged in, it's because Shaitan is working. Ignorance away from the wahy, from the revelation of Allah, makes people very easy to fall into these traps of Shaitan. And the human beings, they have this tendency with the hearts to have the hearts attached to something. And if it's not attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it has to be attached to other than Allah.
Sure. And Sheikh, am I right in saying that the more a Muslim wants to better himself and get closer and closer to Allah, and you want to go up the ladder, the more the shaitan will come and try to confuse you, mislead you, and make you fall into these serious matters?
Definitely, and that's why he's not with those who are already away from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But to a level, the more the person gains knowledge, the more the ways of shaitan become very exposed and very clear. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the plots of shaitan is weak, كيد الشيطان كان ضعيفا, this plots of shaitan is weak when it's opposed with ilm, with knowledge. When it's opposed with ignorance, shaitan can trick the most worshipper on the face of earth. So with ilm, with knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, then all the plots of shaitan becomes very easily exposed.
Okay, dear viewers, I'd like to turn to you now and remind you that our phone lines are open. You can see our numbers hopefully running across the screen. There you go, you can see them there. You've got two options. If you're calling outside of Egypt, don't forget to use the code. Give us your thoughts, give us your opinions on the subject of tawassul, which we're going to just go into right now. And what are your thoughts, what are your understandings, what are your misconceptions? And inshallah ta'ala, we can clarify them here in the studio. Sheikh, so let us begin from the top. We're talking about tawassul. If I can ask you to give us a definition, maybe a linguistic one and an Islamic one as well, and we can take it from there.
The word at-tawassul means basically, linguistically, at-taqarrub, is to be near or to draw oneself near. And this word is used to mean that people wants to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If the purpose of our life is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, so we want to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are the means that would get us close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is basically what at-tawassul is. Some people, they take the proper means, and some people, they take evil means, not impermissible means. And how to know these means and how to differentiate between these means, it can never be known whatsoever unless it's in the wahy revelation from Allah. It's not left for the human beings what to do to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why at-tawassul is not a word that is being condemned all the way. No, there is beautiful tawassul, beautiful ways to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, as tawheed and shirk, there are evil ways that it would not get the person close to Allah. It would make the person far away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thinking that they are getting closer to Allah when they're not.
Okay, so the concept itself, it's an Islamic concept, it's a religious concept, but it needs to be clarified, if I'm right in understanding.
Right, definitely, because this is one of the traps of shaitan. And many people, they want to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they do it the wrong way. So it keeps them being away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not close.
Okay, excellent. Sheikh, also, while we go into the subject of tawassul, I think I found three main things or three main topics that would need clarifying as well. One of those is the concept of dua in Islam. What is dua and what is the correct methodology for dua?
Since at-tawassul is to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to take the means to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Sheikh, sorry to interrupt you. We've got a phone call and then we will come back straight to your answer. We have with us Brother Ali from Egypt. If I can get your call, brother. Assalamu alaikum. Oh dear. Okay. There was some tawassul problems there. Okay, Sheikh, sorry.
Since the tawassul is to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to take the means to do so, the dua is basically one of the very important means to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ said that dua whole ibadah. Dua is the ibadah. So when people ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept their dua. So the dua and tawassul are strongly related, because many people, they fall into some wrongdoing by making dua, but instead of making dua and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would ask other than Allah.
Okay.
And that's one of the major differences between Islam and disbelief and different aspects of disbelief. The disbelievers at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and at all times, as it's mentioned in the Quran, they said when they were opposed by the Tawheed, they said about their idols or these images of the righteous people that they worship besides Allah, they said, مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفًا.
Okay.
They said we do not worship them except that they would get us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the disbelievers, they want to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the shaitan adorned for them that they need to worship these idols and make dua to them and seek their goodness and whatever forgiveness, so that they will be close to Allah. So they would take them as a step closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their intentions were good, but their acts is the worst act on the face of earth, which is associating partners with Allah, and it's clearly condemned in the Quran. So it's not just that we need to make dua, but we need to know how to make dua. We're making dua, this is ibadah, so the ibadah has to be done only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. None is to be mentioned besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We only call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can use some means of tawassul, which is permissible in our dua that we can discuss inshallah ta'ala with our own actions basically, and the names and attributes of Allah and so on.
Okay, sure. Sheikh, before we go into those details, I want to just make a distinction here between the Muslims' worship or dua, like you said, and other faiths. So, for example, the Christians, they would go to their priest and ask him to ask Allah for them. Or, for example, the Hindus or those other pagans, they would ask for idols to intercede for them. So is this concept not in Islam totally?
Totally, it's not permissible, and this is basically the difference between iman and kufr, belief and disbelief, and tawheed and shirk, and associating partners with Allah. And that's exactly what the people of Quraysh were doing, and that's where the verses of the Quran were revealed to condemn them and to say that they will be in hellfire forever.
Okay.
All of which they used to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they would praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and sometimes even make dua only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when there are necessities, but they were declared to be kuffar al-mushrikeen because of that fact.
Okay.
In their dua, in their acts of worship, they would do one act of worship to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the main one, of course, is dua. So therefore, when a Muslim makes dua, it's totally different than when a Christian or a Jew or someone else makes dua. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone.
Okay.
We don't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through some righteous individuals or saints or prophets or anyone whatsoever, and we have in the Prophet ﷺ the best example. So if someone raises his hand and he says, for example, oh so and so, a creation of Allah, calling a creation of Allah, that's a clear shirk. That's major shirk. That takes the person outside the fold of Islam, because dua is ibadah. It's like making sujood. It's not permissible to make sujood to other than Allah, and it's an act of kufr. The same thing, a person making dua to other than Allah.
Right.
Or at tawassul, if a person would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but through some intercession in their dua. And they would either ask directly the individual, go to his grave, for example, and they say, oh so and so, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for me, like you would do to someone that is alive.
Sure.
If you go to a righteous person and you say to him, please make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for me, it's permissible. It's not the best way, but it's permissible. And something, but when someone is dead, can we go to the dead and ask them to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Of course, definitely it's not permissible.
Sure.
Because there's no evidence of that whatsoever. So, and that's one step closer to the evil tawassul, and that when this is bid'ah, this is innovation in the deen, and then it leads the person to ask directly from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or to ask Allah, oh Allah, by you, this person, or by that person, forgive me.
Sure.
Because of that person, do this to me and this to me. And this is where it's forbidden tawassul, because it's not the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no such a thing whatsoever mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and because dua is ibadah. So how can the ibadah then becomes part of it, that you're getting closer human beings here now as part of your call?
It becomes diluted.
Right. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you read the Quran, the whole entire Quran is about tawheed. Prophet ﷺ protecting the tawheed of the ummah in so much details that it makes it so clear that once you add the human being a name of a creation of Allah, like salah, from the beginning to the end of the salah, we don't say anything except worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then at the end we say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We even say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. The call is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to praise the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the entire salah is tawheed, and the same way with all of our affairs and our dua.
And Sheikh, so is it fair then to say that as Muslims, our concept of dua is a direct one-to-one relationship between the servant as we are and our Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's as simple as that?
As simple as that. And the very amazing thing is, I remember one time a Christian person was telling me that how can you just directly call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone? We have to go through something else. You see how the shaitan adorns things for people. They think, like if you go to a king, for example, from the human beings, you cannot just go straight to him. You have to go through something, right? And this is how evil the shaitan had made things for the people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that created me and you and everyone. And first of all, it's not just with matters of intellect, but with wahy, revelation from Allah. And as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making the resemblance of a human being or a king or so, he does not hear all of his creation. You have to go through certain individuals. Where is that in the deen of Allah? وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِ عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. If my slaves ask you about me, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'm indeed qareeb. I'm close to them. I'm near to them with the power of Allah, with the knowledge of Allah, and I would respond to their dua.
Okay.
And that's the power of Allah. Nothing is the like of Allah. That billions of people would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of them at the same time, with different languages, with different needs. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears all of them, and He can accept and respond to all of their dua without any weakness and any deficiency. Otherwise, we're basically saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is deficient like the human beings.
Okay, excellent. Sheikh, the next concept, after the concept of dua, which is related to tawassul, is the famous word of wasila. What does wasila mean? And when it comes in the Quran, what is the meaning in that as well?
Al-wasila is the same thing. It's the pronoun of the word, which is a mean to make the person closer to something. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned al-wasila in the Quran. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu ittaqullaha wa bitaghu ilayhi al-wasila. That, O you who believe, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, be dutiful to Allah, and seek to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-wasila. Seek closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So al-wasila is a general word. That means you need to take certain measures and means to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't happen by default like this. You have to do some things to make yourself close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are these things? It's basically what's mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is your faith, your belief, your good deeds, your worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes. So these are the means, and not just any means, right? If a person, for example, would think, I want to kill a sinner, and I would seek the pleasure of Allah, and this is a wasila for me to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an evil way for a person to think.
Okay.
Or a person would say, I want to drink intoxications because it makes me feel good, and it makes me feel that I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it's a way to get me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is all evil things. Why? Because Allah forbade that. So the only way for us to know what gets us close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to do. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to do certain things and forbade us from things that people think that it might get them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But still, shaitan has his own ways to trick masses with ignorance and not with knowledge, with ilm whatsoever.
Okay, excellent. So Sheikh, we've talked under the topic of tawassul, we've had a look at we looked at the concept of dua, we looked at the concept of wasila, and just very briefly so that we can tie everything together is the concept of shirk. In a nutshell, what is shirk, especially in this concept?
Shirk, the root of it is when the hearts are attached to other than Allah.
Okay.
This is the root of it. And then when it comes to practicality is when people would give or make or do one act of worship or more to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship, all acts of worship has to be done to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So any act of worship that is done to Allah and other than Allah, that's shirk. So that is related to al-wasila again, because the dua is ibadah, and when people seek help from the dead or from those who are creation of Allah, and they put this in the context of dua, it's like making sujood to Allah and making sujood to other than Allah.
Okay.
Right? That makes the act as an act of shirk and not tawheed. Tawheed is pure. That means no contamination to it. There's no such a thing as tawheed and shirk to be together. It doesn't make sense. It does not exist for a person to say that he's a Muslim and a Christian at the same time. Either to be a Muslim or to be a Christian. Either a person is on the tawheed, or on some shirk or shirk. But to say that the tawheed has shirk in it, that means it's not tawheed. It's not oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay, excellent. Sheikh, on that point, if we can start looking now on the different types of wasila, as we've just discussed. Some of those I think the Muslims will agree upon, and I think there's one particular type where there is contention, and we will come to that towards the end. But the first type, what is the type of wasila when we're using the names and attributes of Allah?
Now, the wasila that we make with the names and attributes of Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to do that, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. That to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belong the perfect and the beautiful names.
Okay.
So therefore make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by these names, and this is the wasila. So in your dua, you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by using these names and attributes of Allah, and this is the wasila, this is a mean to get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when a person wants to make dua, from the etiquettes of dua is to mention some of the names of Allah as a way to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if a person doesn't know much, he can recite the first 3 verses of Surah Al-Fatiha, for example.
Okay.
And to ask Allah, if you're asking for forgiveness, a person can say, O Allah Al-Ghafur, forgive my sins. O you're the most forgiver, forgive my sins. Ya Dhal Jalali wal Ikram, the Prophet ﷺ said, Alidhu bi Dhal Jalali wal Ikram. Repeat Ya Dhal Jalali wal Ikram so much. Ya Arham Ar-Rahimin, Arhamni. O Allah, the most merciful, have mercy on me. Oh Allah Ar-Razzaq, the provider, provide for me. So you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the name that is related to your request.
Your need.
You need. And the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are many, as we know. And that's
Sure.
the benefit of learning the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is one of the etiquettes of dua. So constantly using these names and attributes of Allah to draw oneself nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Allah ordered in the Quran, this is definitely a beautiful way, and it's an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it increases the iman of the believers.
Okay, and just to give that a practical example, Sheikh, many people, if they want to have a child or they're looking for extra money, they will go to other people and ask them to help them in these matters so they can have a baby boy or a baby girl. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name is Ar-Razzaq, that He is the one who is giving. So in that matter, if I want a baby boy or a girl, should I then raise my hands and ask Allah with His name Ar-Razzaq?
Naam, definitely. And with the subject of dua, anything a person do, as long as it's not haram, it's permissible.
Okay.
Not every time a person makes dua, he has to make sure that the words of the Prophet ﷺ are being mentioned. Of course, that's the most perfect way to make dua. But as long as the dua does not have any shirk or any sins involved in it or anything like this, a person can ask and to use the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the provider, and that's why a person should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this name and attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He's Al-Wahhab, and He's the provider when it comes to life and so on. He's the one that, so for people to do that, definitely. And taking the physical means, of course, this is also part of one's life. But to have that sincere dua with the belief, because again, when we see the Quran, the verses in the Quran keeps on repeating in our hearts the facts of Tawheed, because the shaitan keeps on contaminating it.
Okay.
So when we say, oh Allah Ar-Razzaq, the hearts sometimes get attached to other than Allah. They think that human beings can provide, or if I'm obedient to Allah, then my provisions will be less.
Sure.
Or the boss, or this and that. And so that's why the hearts need to be fully sincere. That really when we say, oh Allah Ar-Razzaq, that means there is no on earth whatsoever that will provide for us. The provision comes from above. وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. In the heavens is your rizq. Your rizq comes from above, not from the human beings on earth. We take the means, yes. But this is where the hearts needs to be. And that's what we're subject about, the hearts and the deeds of the heart. When we say the names and attributes of Allah, we say it with our tongues, we know the meanings of it, and more importantly, the hearts is settled with these meanings that nothing is the like of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay, excellent. Dear viewers, I'd like to turn to you once again and remind you of our program today. We are talking about tawassul. Please pick up your phones and call us here in the studio. Give us your questions, your queries. What do you think of the subject? What about in your countries? What are the actions that are practiced with regards to tawassul? Do people go to the graves? Do people go to people and make dua to them? What are the situations inside of your countries? Pick up your phone and tell us, inshallah ta'ala. We'll try our best to clarify whether it's correct or whether it is incorrect. Okay, Sheikh, we've talked about the first type, which is using the names and attributes of Allah. What about the second type, which is using righteous actions? And also, what is the proof for that?
Using righteous actions as means of wasila, or to draw one close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is a valid thing. And we have evidences of that, which is basically famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about the three people from the nations before when they get trapped in a cave. And each one they asked, or they said to one another, let's make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using one of your good deeds that you did sincerely for the sake of Allah. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would relieve us from what we're in. Okay. So each one mentioned a deed that they did. And at the end of their mentioning of their deed, they said, oh Allah, if you know that I did this sincerely for your sake, relieve us from what we are in. So the rock would move a little bit, but it's not sufficient for them to leave or to go out of the cave till the three of them mentioned it. So this is an evidence that a person can make in his dua, oh Allah, I did this, and he can mention the good deeds, establishing salah, zakah, a special deed that needed a lot of sacrifice or whatever. And he would say, oh Allah, if you know, and Allah knows best, that if I did this sincerely for your sake, help me or provide for me and so on. This is permissible. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. With one's actions, with even one's love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this is part of the action. Allah, you know my love, that how I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, give this to me. Or I love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as things like this, then this is something that is permissible. It's valid for a person to do that because it's one's actions.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Sheikh, on that note, let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll continue looking at the other types of tawassul, and then we'll finally get to the most contentious part, the tawassul that's disagreed upon. So dear viewers, let's take a short break here, and I would like for you during the break to think about our subject of tawassul, think about the subject of the graves. What questions do you have? What actions in your society, in your community are prevalent and you think they may be incorrect or impermissible? Call us here in the studio and tell us what they are, and we will try to shed some light on those actions as well. Let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll continue with our discussion on tawassul. So I'll see you all in a few minutes.
Change your heart, Lord, change our heart, Lord, change our heart.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers. I've taken a short break on our live program, Gems of the Heart, where we are talking about issues relating to Aqidah, issues relating to our heart, issues relating to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our topic for the day is tawassul. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, I would like for all of you to pick up your phones and join me in the studio. What do you think of the topic of tawassul? What are the problems in your society with regards to people making dua to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their rituals with regards to graves? Call us and tell us about those. We would love to hear what's going on in your communities as well. Sheikh, if we can come back to our subject, we talked about two forms of tawassul, the names and attributes of Allah, and also the actions or good actions that you have done. And the third form of tawassul, when we ask somebody else for their dua, what is the correct understanding of that?
Now, asking someone else for dua, either that person is alive or he's dead.
Okay.
So for those who are alive, and we ask them directly to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us, this is, in principle, it's permissible. But this is the best way to do it, and sometimes people do it in an extreme way. They tend to make dua less, and they always ask others to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them. And their excuse is that we're sinners, we're bad people, so we need to ask those who are righteous and so on. If that's the reason, that's not a good thing. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from each and every one to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts the dua of the disbelievers even. Yes, the person has to take the means to purify his wealth and so on for the dua to be accepted. And there's nothing wrong, it's not haram, it's not shirk to ask someone else to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you. But the best way is that for ourselves to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our own selves. But it's not shirk, it's not something that is haram for a person to ask someone else to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them if they're alive. If they're dead, or they might be alive but not present with you, and you're not asking them directly, because some people that might do this. A righteous man, for example, he's alive but in different parts of the world. They don't call him on the phone, but they would make dua and they would ask them as if they can hear them, or they have some super power things. Anyone that is dead or anyone that is not present, right, then other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is then comes into the form of shirk if a person asks them directly.
Okay, so for example, Sheikh, if I make dua, our respected Sheikh Muhammad Salah, let's say he's in Turkey, and I say, oh, Ya Allah, on behalf of Dr. Muhammad Salah, can you accept this, that, and that? This is considered to be incorrect.
This is incorrect. Or the other person will ask directly,
okay,
oh, so and so, help me, when he's
Okay.
not present, right? This is not permissible. And sometimes people, they say this and they refer back to their parents when they're not present or they passed away. And they would say, oh my father, oh my mother. You know, oh my father, oh my mother, and they're dead. They would not benefit you by anything whatsoever. Instead say, oh Allah, help me. But what's the father and the mother would do for you? If the father and the mother are present in front of you and you ask them, there's nothing wrong. They have the capacity to do things. But to ask someone that is not present, you know, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, but it's two levels. One is to ask the dead directly, oh so and so help me, or so and so forgive me, like this. This is major shirk, because the dua, the ibadah becomes to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly.
Sure.
Or the second level, which is still not permissible, but of a lesser level, of a lesser evil, but it's still not permissible, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of the status of so and so, to help and so on. This is not permissible. And this is where you said that there's differences, or this is what's still not permissible, because this is innovation in the deen. There's no evidence to it whatsoever. Plus you added a human being, a creation of Allah, into the tawheed and the oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay, so just to clarify that, we're saying from amongst that, if you ask somebody who is alive and he's in front of you. So for example, I'm sitting here and say, oh Sheikh Ibrahim, can you make dua for me? This is permissible and there's no problem with that.
Right.
But if the person is either far away or dead, and we ask not directly to that particular person, but we ask Allah and we use that as a rank. So let's say, for example, the Prophet ﷺ, so if I make dua and say, oh, on the position, on the rank of the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Allah, can you grant me this and that? This is where the contention lies.
Right. And this is not permissible. Why? When we say, okay, there's contention. And people might say, you guys don't love the Prophet ﷺ, or you don't know the level and the status of the Prophet ﷺ. There is, of course, agreement that the Prophet ﷺ and his level, he's the best human being ever walked on the face of earth. And he's the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no confusion in this whatsoever. But when it comes to acts of worship, we have to agree that we only get to know our worship from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So if the Prophet ﷺ did something the like of it, then sure, definitely we should follow that. But where is that in the Prophet ﷺ and the lives of the companions radiallahu anhum? And the love of the Prophet ﷺ, if it's a true love, that means we would follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ.
Okay.
So there's no evidence of that whatsoever that is mentioned in the Quran or authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And what is mentioned, sometimes they mention hadith, it's fabricated, it's not authentic, and agreed upon. It's not something for us to build action based on a fabricated or weak hadith. And we have the best of the companions, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, after the Prophet ﷺ returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Did he ask the Prophet ﷺ when he was in his graves, a few steps away? Did he ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the Prophet ﷺ? Of course, if he asked directly the Prophet ﷺ, that's major shirk. That's agreed upon. There's no differences in this.
Sure.
But to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of the Prophet ﷺ, it was never done by the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Umar radiallahu anhu, and this is an evidence that people sometimes use it in the wrong way. When Umar radiallahu anhu at his time, there was famine, or they were asking for rain, drought. And he said, radiallahu anhu, and he was right there close to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. But he said, oh Allah, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, oh Allah, we used to make tawassul by your Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and now we're making tawassul by the Abbas, Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ.
Okay.
Some people take this as an evidence that it's permissible to make tawassul by individuals, because saying, oh Allah, we're making tawassul by Al-Abbas. We need to understand the context. Why didn't he say then, oh Allah, we're making tawassul by the Prophet ﷺ? He said, we used to. Meaning, during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to do so. And now, since the Prophet ﷺ passed away, then we're making tawassul by the one that is alive, which is Al-Abbas, his uncle, one of the family of the Prophet ﷺ. What did they used to do at the time of the Prophet ﷺ? The Prophet ﷺ would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what they used to do, and this is what it's clearly mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And what it means that Umar radiallahu anhu is asking Al-Abbas to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the rain, which is the permissible tawassul. Not that he's asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that to give him rain because of Al-Abbas. He could have said that, oh Allah, give us rain because of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is better than Al-Abbas,
Sure.
and he's right there. But instead he said by Al-Abbas, because Al-Abbas will make dua. And they would say Ameen to the dua. And this is the means of tawassul which is permissible for someone that is alive to make dua.
Okay.
So the Sahaba radiallahu anhu never done this. So for someone to introduce something in the religion, especially when it's a step closer to matters of shirk, this is innovation in the deen, and it was not done by these great people of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and so on.
Okay, and Sheikh, there are many other narrations which talk about tawassul and taking others as intermediaries. So is it generally fair to say that these narrations are either weak or fabricated, and hence it's not permissible to build a principle of belief on these issues?
All of the narrations, if it's authentic, you would find it that is with someone that is alive and not someone that is dead, or something related to one's actions, one's love, for example, to the Prophet ﷺ. That's your own action, so you can make tawassul with your own actions. There's no authentic narration whatsoever that talks about making tawassul with someone that is dead whatsoever. There's no authenticity to any of that whatsoever.
Okay, so what about now in our present day? Are we allowed to make tawassul by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
The tawassul that we would make by the Prophet ﷺ is to follow the Prophet ﷺ. This is the mean for us to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be obedient to Allah by following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, by making salah on the Prophet ﷺ. These are means to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if it means to make dua to the Prophet ﷺ, that's shirk, of course, it's clear. If it means to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the Prophet ﷺ, this is innovation in the religion. There was no such a thing part of our deen that we do this, or it's mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, so it should not be mentioned whatsoever in the dua. But what should be done in the dua is that we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes. We make salah on the Prophet ﷺ when we say Allahumma salli. See, the dua is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then after. But what should be done in the dua is that we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes. We make salah when we say Allahumma salli. See, the dua on the Prophet ﷺ subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then after. But what should be done in the dua is that we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. The dua is to Allah and attributes. We make salah on the Prophet ﷺ when we say Allahumma salli. See, the subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then after. But what should be the dua is to Allah. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes. We make salah on the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray when we say Allahumma salli. See, but what should be praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. The dua is to Allah and attributes. We make salah. Done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ. But what should be when we say Allahumma salli. See, the dua is to Allah. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. Done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ and attributes. We make salah when we say Allahumma salli. See, the dua is to Allah. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. On the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray in attributes. We make salah when we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. On the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray in attributes. We make salah when we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. Done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ when we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. Done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ when we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. On the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray when we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. On the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray when we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. On the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray when we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. On the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray when we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. Done in the dua is that we pray when we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. On the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. On the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray when we say Allahumma salli. See, the on the Prophet ﷺ. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. When we say Allahumma salli. See, the done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ. Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. When we say Allahumma salli. See, the praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names. On the Prophet ﷺ. When we say Allahumma salli. See, the done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ. When we say Allahumma salli. See, the done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray when we say Allahumma salli. See, the on the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ. When we say Allahumma salli. See, the done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ. When we say Allahumma salli. See, the done in the dua is that we pray on the Prophet ﷺ. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray Salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Done in the dua is that we pray